Welcome to this edition of Hindsight is Horrifying, the show where three mostly normal and somewhat cynical adults discuss life as members of the TV generation. Now here are your hosts, Darth Jader, Jason Mitchell, and Adam B.
Good evening.
You do it. Yeah, fine. You do it.
I will.
Welcome, everyone. Hey, Hindsighters. Oh, hey.
Oh, this is going so smoothly.
God, we're so amateurish.
This new setup has messed up our feng shui.
We've got a new studio, everyone.
Yay. It's all good.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I'm very excited to be here. Really happy to be here.
He's done a lot of drugs today. As you might have noticed, we are actually in an entirely new studio, which is actually the old studio, but with different furniture. Actually, it's the same furniture. We just moved things. We feng shuied it, and now we've got a proper setup here.
Where you can see all three of us.
Yes, look.
On one side of the table.
Maybe.
Sort of, okay.
Well, I said on one side of the table. I didn't specify that.
I can do this and see, there I am.
Hi, everybody.
I can do a dog. There you go. Okay, so what are we doing today to inaugurate the brand new studio?
Well, Mr. Brown shifted the game on us a little bit. This week was his pick, and he picked something that's not our usual fare, as I'm sure you noticed, Jason.
Is it porn?
No, not this time. I'm not falling for that. He knows better than to try to trick me into watching porn. But we...
Again.
Uh-oh. Did it already happen and you wiped my memory? Oh, no. But anyway... We are actually watching a movie called Wildling from 2018, and the synopsis of this movie is: confined to an attic for years by a man claiming to be her protector, teenage Anna is liberated and begins learning the rest of her terrifying story. And this movie was, I can't lie, this movie was rather intense, and there was some violent factors to it. So, Mr. Brown, why don't you explain to us your thought process behind this pick?
Well, it's a fantastic film, which you all will agree on.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I
mean, it's no Shark Night.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, having watched this, and I was a little skeptical, but I absolutely loved it. It was the most enjoyable movie experience I've had in quite a while.
Agreed.
So the interesting thing about this film is when it was premiering on Netflix, I got a phone call from someone, a friend of mine, and he said, Adam, you got to watch this movie,
You
The
have
Wildling.
other friends?
Well, I don't anymore after meeting you two. So that was it. He hasn't spoken to me since. His name is Rick Sordelet, and he said, hey, Adam, you got to watch this film.
What?
Yes. Rick Sordelet, because his son, Collin Kelly-Sordelet, is in this film. So I just wanted to make sure that
let's give him a shout out.
Yeah, how about that, Mr. Brown? Since you're such a big deal, let's call this celebrity friend of yours.
Oh, you do? Oh, I see where you're going. You think he's full of shit.
Oh, I absolutely do.
I think, you know what? I'll take that bet. I'll take that
You're
action.
putting money on Mr. Brown? Okay, all right.
No, I'm putting money. No, I'm putting. Okay,
oh, you're
20
putting money on me. Okay,
$20. Mr. Brown says you are full of it.
All right, Hindsighters, I have told many lies during this show, but this is not one of them, and I'm going to prove it right now.
Oh, bring it. Let's see this.
Oh, this will be.
God.
I'm trembling in my flip-flops.
Oh no! What are we going to do?
Please, Lord.
Oh no!
He has his phone out. Does he have one of those fake apps?
Uh-oh, I hear it ringing.
It's actually
Are you
ringing.
guys messing with me? Did you
Actually
plan
ringing.
this?
I hear it ringing.
It should.
I hear it ringing.
Hey, Adam, how you doing?
What? Colin? Colin!
Hey, how are you?
This is Adam Brown. Everyone, this is Collin Kelly-Sordelet, the star of the film we're talking about tonight. They did not believe that I knew you.
I owe Mr. Brown $20 now.
Yeah, they owe me large sums of money. But no, the story, I've known,
Amazing.
I've known your folks for many, many, many moons, and I knew you when you were a little bitty baby. In fact, when I moved to New York City, I did a lot
You
of
can just say New York.
Thank you. Thank you, Darth. And by the way, Colin, my two partners here are Jason and Jade. We call her Darth Jader, and myself, Adam. And we have a podcast.
Very nice to meet you, Jason and Darth Jader. Very nice to meet you both.
Very nice to meet you, too. Thank you very much for taking the time out to be on the show.
Absolutely. This is an honor.
But when I moved to New York,
gosh.
I was just going to say, Colin, that I did some couch surfing, and I was going to sleep on your couch. But you, as a young toddler, said, Mommy and Daddy, he can have my room.
Aww.
So even as someone who could barely speak, he was generous and wonderful and a sweet human being.
Okay, because I'm glad you followed up with that because you're making him regret coming on the show.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I'll be entirely honest with you, Adam. I don't remember that, but I appreciate the sentiment. So thank you very much.
Mr. Brown.
Well, so Collin, the last time I swung by your place, you had moved out. You're now where? Living in Brooklyn?
I'm in Astoria, Queens.
Astoria, Queens. So I didn't get a chance to really talk to you the last time I was by Montclair, New Jersey. But your dad and mom told me that you're involved in a new project called Escaping Ohio. I'm just interested in hearing a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm currently producing, co-starring, and co-writing the project. It's a feature film that we're actually going into production in the middle of August, and we'll be shooting from August to early September in Ohio on location. So the story is about a young woman named Sam who's just graduated school, and she's growing up in a small Ohio town, and she's faced with kind of a difficult choice of accepting a life that's been presented to her, a scholarship and a life that's going to keep her in this small Ohio town, or making a choice to leave and kind of choose herself and go off into the unknown, despite everything kind of set up for her where she is. And it's told in the story. It's very much like a rom-com. It's told in the style of like a 90s, 2000s teen rom-com, but we want to give it a little bit more of a 2020 mentality.
Excellent.
To just kind of, choosing yourself over maybe choosing the guy, so to speak.
And you've done a short of it, right? Now this is a full length?
Yes, sir. Yeah, this has all been in quarantine. It started with me and a few friends just being really sick of not working and, having that creative itch that we needed to scratch. And so we just kind of started talking about some shorts, and we were talking about, man, it'd be really cool to, collaborate and work on some things. And my partner in this, Jessica Michael Davis, sent a script over for this short with this idea. It's semi-autobiographical. It's a little bit about her life. She grew up in Ohio and since escaped to New York. In this case, for our story, it's going to be California. But and we just decided, let's screw it. Let's make a movie. And so we decided to make a short, and we filmed it in Ohio. October 2020. And then we've been submitting it to film festivals. We actually are semi-finalists currently for the Flickr Film Festival, which is an Oscar qualifier. So we're really excited, just kind of about the trajectory of it. And within that, we had a lot of support and a lot of people really interested in it. And so we decided to say, screw it, let's go ahead and turn it into a feature film.
Excellent. Now, are you still looking for funds? Are you crowdsourcing anything? Or are you good to go?
Yeah, we're still crowdsourcing. We're still in the midst of locking down funding with. We're also in talks with a few production companies and distributors and things. So it's a long process, but we have funds, and we're still going ahead with our production shoot, and everything's pretty much locked in. We have a cast, we have a crew, and we've got locations, and we're all set. And we got a dream. That's
oh my
sure.
gosh, that's exciting!
Well done.
That is super exciting.
Living the dream. That's so cool. It's so fucking
doing
cool.
Our best. Yeah. Win, lose, draw. We're just really excited for the opportunity. This is my first time kind of getting behind the camera a little bit and doing a little more work as a producer and writer and kind of the overall, bits and pieces of making a movie and kind of getting into the nitty gritty of it. So it's been a huge learning experience. And, no matter what kind of success or if it has any kind of success, I'm just so grateful for it and super excited, to get into it again and to work with such a phenomenal cast and crew.
Awesome. Well, it's not just learning lines and developing a character. Now you've got to think of the writing and the producing and the directing. Do you find that a little stressful?
Definitely. Very, very lucky to have had just phenomenal people, like fellow actors. Jess, my writing partner, she's going to be directing and also starring in it. And so it's a whole process, and it's been a lot, putting on a different hat and, having to think about budgets, having to, deal with contracts, getting locations, making sure everything's cleared with the unions, and dealing with my own schedule as well. I'm going to have to come back to New York to do a play reading for a week and then fly back out to finish the movie. So it's a lot of different cogs, but at the same time, we're we're really excited, and we've got a lot of great people behind it with us. So just excited for the journey, and we'll see kind of where it takes us.
Excellent.
Fantastic. Remember, Alfred Hitchcock never said that actors should be treated, or that actors were cattle. He said you should treat them like cattle. so that's the world you're in now.
I'm sure that'll go over well.
Hey, I get it.
We're all looking forward to seeing. Now, you're going to have to let us know through Mr. Brown, of course, how we can see the movie when we could get a chance to see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, feed as much information to me as you can, and we'll get it on the airwaves and get as many people's eyes on it as possible.
Yeah, and if you have a Kickstarter or a Patreon or anything like that, let us know. We'll be happy to put that on the social media.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that from the three of you. That's so kind of you, and every bit helps. I'll absolutely send you over some things. I'll send you the link to our crowdfunding site, which is WeFunder. And so we can't unfortunately show the short film on a website yet, but I can send you all a private link for you to be able to see it. But I can also send a trailer for it, which can be viewed publicly and can be put on social media and things.
Awesome.
But
cool.
Thank you very much again. I really appreciate that. And I'll make sure to send that over to Adam so that you get a chance to take a look.
You bet.
I believe my stock has now gone up about 10
think
points.
so.
I see his worth now.
Yes. Now, before we get into this fantastic movie,
did we tell Collin why we were?
Oh yeah, that was the reason we're calling is
there might be a reason.
Yes. Well, we're watching The Wildling right here, on our podcast, and we normally just like to comment on what's going on. But now that we've got you, my fellow podcasters may have some questions for you.
Well, I was going to say, before we talk about the movie, just as a point of order, do you have any embarrassing stories about Mr. Brown?
Yes, please.
If so, please, I think now is the time to share them.
Well, I'm sure his dad...
I'm going to be honest. I can't...
No, I was just going to say.
My dad probably.
Yeah, your dad has many embarrassing stories, but you and I we've known each other for years. We've had lots of conversations, but this will probably be the first time we've sat down and dug in and talked about projects in the level of depth we're going to cover. So that's why I'm so excited about having you on the show.
All right. Well,
me too. I think always there's been a filter and a level of my parents here, and so now we're in it. It's you and me,
right.
and Jay and Darth Jader as well. So here we are.
Well, Darth, why don't you kick us off? Yeah, why don't you start our discussion of The Wildling?
Sure. Well, we all compiled some questions, so we've got them here on a list. If that's not too nerdy.
I mean, I know my first question.
Well, then go ahead.
I know. My first question is, after watching this and seeing Belle Mooney, she seems very intense, and I was wondering what it was. Belle Powley. Sorry. And I was wondering, was she sort of intimidating to act across from?
She was intimidating to act across from solely in the sense because she was such a phenomenal actor, but not intense as a person. As a personality, she was so incredibly lovely and joyful and funny. And she is one of those phenomenal actors that can just turn it on and off like a switch, and can be making these ridiculous jokes, and then suddenly is in this most serious moment and is like got the one single tough tear coming down camera side every time. And it's like it amazes me when actors are able to do that with such ease and being so comfortable like that. She was phenomenal. And yeah, I mean she's a very intense actress, but again she's just so good, and that really is I think where it stemmed from. But off camera, our relationship was great, and it was really just lovely. We were just joking a lot of the time, and it was really easy.
That makes me very happy to hear.
Well, really good. You had some pretty intimate scenes that you had to work through. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
to put it mildly.
To put it mildly, it's definitely one of those films where it's like, ooh, that's definitely his first film, huh? It was a lot of fun, and one of the things that's funny about all that is with a film, because it's so different than theater in the sense that it's shot typically chronologically. So you're going to be filming out of order, and so sometimes you'll be filming the beginning of the movie or the end of the movie first, or like in the middle of it or something. And so you have to kind of craft and pinpoint where is my character and what is our relationship at this point. So that's one of the things that's definitely hard. And without, sometimes getting to know the person and starting to have like a good working relationship from jump, it can be really hard to get into that place. Working with someone that's maybe harder to work with, which luckily Belle was not.
Well, sort of along those lines, how did you create the character of Ray? What was the sort of mental process? I think so much of it was in the phenomenal writing from Fritz, and they really laid it out on the page, kind of who he was. And in terms of my approach, it really felt, Ray was a fringe thinker. He was on the fringes of his society, and didn't really have a lot of friends. People didn't really care to get to know him, and I don't think he really, because of that, also didn't really care to get to know them. And so a lot of it was, feeling isolated. And I think that's one of the things why, Ray and Anna have this relationship, because they are so, they're both seen in this certain way. And so they're able to kind of bond over being the odd ones out. And I think he's able to understand that in her, and kind of understand the sense of, it's okay to be different, and it's okay for people to look at you differently, and that doesn't make you any less of who you are. Yeah, the relationship felt very, very real. Like it genuinely felt organic.
It did, and it rang truest for me, Collin, when I actually saw your character, Ray, being locked in a closet at school by these school bullies, when Anna was the one who's been locked in a room her whole life. I saw that, and I was like, oh, they're both trapped in their own little worlds because these people are victimizing them. And like, was that a powerful connection for your characters for you, or how did that work?
No, absolutely. I think you hit the nail right on the head there. I mean, there's a lot of lovely parallels between the two characters, and I think between their experiences and why they ultimately kind of bond with one another. And I think there's something in the sense of Ray, who's experienced so much of the world, and not to give too much of a spoiler away in regards to the story, but he had lost his parents and was living with his older sister. And those are really hard things to deal with as any individual. I can only imagine. I've been lucky enough not to be in that position, but to empathize with it is, that's one of the most horrible things you can face, and then to also be stuck in this other mindset and people seeing you a certain way. I think he is enticed and kind of loves to see the innocence and the naivete of Anna and her. And watching the kind of the world seen through her eyes for the first time in a lot of ways, I think kind of maybe reinstills a sense of beauty in the world, and kind of in I guess maybe not humanity in this case, because they're wildlings or mystical beasts, but in I guess a sense in people.
Yeah, no, the cast was extraordinarily balanced, I thought. Now, and I have a question, Collin. Did you get cast in this in the traditional way? Was it audition? Did you know someone who was producing it? How did you get your foot in the door in this Netflix production?
So actually, this originally wasn't through Netflix. So this was produced by Maven Pictures, which is just a phenomenal film company. They do a lot of great independent films, and specifically with strong female characters in the lead. And that's really one of their kind of banner statements, which I really responded to and really loved. And I actually knew, so Trudy Styler is one of the co-founders of Maven Pictures, and Trudy Styler is married to Sting. And so when I did a Broadway show with Sting, back in 2014 called The Last Ship.
Yep.
And so that's how I got to know Trudy.
No, wait, you said Sting.
But I was not.
As in Sting of the Police? Sting?
Yes, that's Sting. We call him Gordon Sumner.
Wow.
Yeah, Gordon
Sumner.
Yeah, good old Gordy. Good old Gordon Michael Sumner in this household.
That's probably the coolest name drop I've ever heard.
Yes.
Sting. I did this thing with Sting.
Not I met him at a Comic-Con. I actually did a project with him.
No,
that's pretty amazing.
I met fake Sting at an impersonators convention once. That's about the best I've got.
No, I've seen videos on YouTube. It was the real Sting, and it was Collin. They were together.
That's amazing.
So it sounds
true,
like
yeah.
it sounds like you were plugged in.
A bit, yeah. I mean, I originally, so I auditioned and I went through the traditional ways. Like I got the audition through my agent.
Right.
I went in through casting. I got a call back. After a call back, I had a director's meeting. And then I ultimately, because even if sometimes when you know people, that's not always enough. Sometimes you have to go through different rounds of producers, directors, writers, executive producers, and making sure that, your chemistry works, that
Right.
everyone's going to work well together and that it's going to be balanced and it's going to read on screen. And so for me, it was great. Like I loved getting a chance to, sit down with director Fritz and, just have a chat about the character and about his vision and, and kind of get to collaborate and kind of brainstorm a little bit about, our mutual visions of who that character is and his arc. And it was just a lot of fun. And then I was incredibly lucky and blessed to get the call that I had booked it. And I was just so grateful
exciting.
for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And, it can be really, a disheartening life sometimes, auditioning a lot. And, you go in and you'll do, the best work you can and to sometimes never hear anything. And so the few moments that it does hit, it can be incredibly validating and it makes it all worth it. It really does. It makes sometimes years and hundreds of auditions where you hear nothing worth it. Sometimes for just that moment that you get back on set and then you get to sink your teeth back in. And so there's the common joke that, an actor's real job is to audition. And when you get the job, you're on vacation.
Exactly.
I can see that. It's very much like my love life. it's very analogous. It reminds me of college.
What it must be to be a man.
You audition and you audition, you try.
And the answer is always
It's
no.
always no.
Poor fool. Well, speaking of, going into that sort of discussion of gender, Collin, you mentioned the fact that strong women, the theme of that sort of appealed to you in this project. So going back to where your character was locked in the closet, and then when your bullies turn on you and Anna gut punches one of them, how did you feel about that? Because it seems like your character went back and forth between enjoying, like you said, her naivete and her innocence, and then he raises his hackles at her when she goes to defend him physically. So do you think the character struggled with that personally, as, almost took it offensively that a female felt the need to protect him?
Yeah, I mean, I think I never really made the distinction specifically, I guess, about gender. I think I always kind of just felt that I think he didn't want to be protected. I think he wanted to try and protect himself.
Gotcha.
But at the same time, but back to that though, I think so often with playing characters, you have moments or specific, things that are necessary for the character and for who they are that are so contrary to maybe your own beliefs.
Sure.
And it's sometimes hard to find a way to, empathize or be able to, actively portray that in an honest way while still retaining your own, sanity and your own beliefs and being able to, separate yourself from your character. And that's so often where the kind of the crafting comes from. And there was a lot of that. I'm not as angsty overall, I think, as Ray is. Like I wear my hair back. I don't put it over my eyes. I might, maybe look out windows longingly now and again, but I think
Don't we all?
a lot of it. I think a lot of it was really trying to just get in that headspace of being a teenager again and really struggling with who I am, how I'm seen and how I want to be seen, but I don't want the validation from other people, or I don't feel like I need it. And finally getting a moment with someone that feels like they understand and that they get you, and that they might also be in a similar boat, and that you're not alone anymore. And you're not the only one.
That's great.
And speaking of strong women, we obviously should speak about Liv Tyler.
Well, yeah.
This is a very different project for her, given, all the other things I've ever seen her in. This is very, very vastly different. What was she like? What was, did she mesh with the part, or, what was it like working with her?
Oh, she was fantastic. I mean, like, I don't mean to, like, I wish I could just give you like a bunch of like juicy gossip or something, but like everyone was so great. Like everyone was so nice. She was she was also one of the producers on the project. So she had a lot of say in regards to kind of her character and putting, her own, and, really making it her own and really making it her and making it fit, for her and being this, more strong, a little more subdued, as a character. And I loved working with her. And she, much like Belle, is so fun off screen. Like there was one time we were just joking around, and I felt bad because we ended up like holding production for like 2 minutes because we couldn't stop singing Cher. We were just like, and we just couldn't stop. We were just like joking back and forth. And it's also wild.
You've sung Cher with Liv Tyler.
Oh my gosh!
I mean that
lived a life.
It's true.
Yeah, put that on the tombstone. I mean, that's a life accomplishment.
The only regret that I have is that I didn't sing the Aerosmith song from Armageddon that they play over, like the I don't want to close my eyes, or whatever it was. I don't remember. But I really, that's one of my biggest regrets from that production is that I never did that.
I mean, it's awesome the fact that
maybe one day.
Yeah, you worked with somebody whose dad has a roller coaster at Disney. Not very many people, that not a lot of people can say that.
Well, that's what's going on her tombstone.
Yes.
Yeah. And here's a Go ahead. Sorry.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to hit you with a gear shift of a question because we watched the movie as we discuss it. So we had to ask you when you're grocery shopping with Anna and she almost gets upset with you for plucking a berry from a bush and eating it because she thinks that's where children come from. Was it an awkward scene to film where you had to prove her wrong? Less so. I mean, like I remember because like I read the script and I knew it was in there and I knew I was just like, oh god, my character's such a kind of an asshole, or not an asshole, but just kind of a little out of touch there. I mean, but again, he's like a 16-year-old kid.
He comes around very quickly.
Kid isn't out of touch.
Yeah. He's got.
I mean, it's like the next scene that he gives her the sausage.
Well,
oh no, not like that. That's later. Literally, that's later in the movie.
Well, he does it in both senses in this movie. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, in this particular case, like there's nothing on the computer, so like we're not like actually watching anything.
They did.
So like
that's
just us like pretend.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that movie magic.
I know.
No, pure acting talent. Let's just be two young adults pretending to watch porn in front of an entire camera crew. What I will say is one of the awkward parts of filming is like love scenes, like which we can discuss more later if you prefer. But like sometimes those can just be they're never sexy. Like they might seem sexy in the final edit, but when you're filming them, it's not at all sexy. It's like, can you like move over here? Okay, wait, can we? And like they're talking to you the whole time. We had a German director, and so he was like, can you touch her thigh?
You must do some love making more.
Yeah. And so that's all as awkward as it is. And one of the funniest, the key grip on that film is like a close family friend of mine, and so we're setting up. He's like one of a good friend of my brother and sisters. And so at one point he came up to me and whispered in my ear, "Your mom knows what you're doing right now." And I was like, man, God damn it, Will. Yeah, that was definitely
I'd call
funny.
my mom and tell her.
I'll change my tombstone.
Mom, you're not going to believe it.
I will say what's the most awkward part about it is actually having to film the voiceover for it. So I had to go back in, and I had to go back in and watch myself and watch this edit and have to like breathe heavily into a microphone again while this German director is like, can you breathe harder?
Das ist gut.
Harder.
Das ist gut.
Yeah, and like all these like old dudes like in the all these technicians, these amazing technicians, but but yeah, I mean, it's still an awkward experience, and that was one that I didn't really anticipate until it happened, and I was like, wow, okay.
You should have thrown some of the some porn noises in there.
Yeah.
It's a quick.
One thing that would be awkward in a more innocent fashion, I would like to think, is one thing I've heard from actors is that one of the most difficult things to do on set is film scenes where you're eating. And I know that your character doesn't do a lot of that, Collin, but it looks like Belle is chewing on a hamburger or a hot dog in so many different scenes. And did she ever complain about that, where if she had to do multiple takes, it was like she was eating 7 hamburgers? Because John C. McGinley from Scrubs said that the smartest thing you can do if they give you a choice is to put a bowl of soup in front of yourself so that they can't really tell if you're eating, and therefore you don't make yourself sick on whatever it is that you're having to eat over and over again. So was that a problem for her?
So funny enough, Belle is vegetarian, so we had to have a spit bucket.
Awkward.
Oh, so she spit it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So typically what you'll see is for a lot of filming is people will have spit buckets typically.
Yeah.
So that usually what they'll do is they'll cut away. So like someone will take a bite and they'll start chewing, and then they'll usually cut to someone else, and they'll cut back and they've swallowed and they've moved on. And usually you just spit it out. Sometimes you'll get a few takes. I've done a few. I did a short film one time where it was really low budget. It was a great, fantastic crew, but we were filming in a bar for like 12 hours over 2 days in the off hours. So we were filming between like 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. And they didn't have fake champagne, and we just had to just drink champagne for these takes. So the first takes were really coherent, but the latter takes were a little less.
They were loose, a little loose.
A little loose. I felt bad for them in the editing room, but I think they figured it out. It ended up being a lovely short.
Well, as long as the sound guy and the camera operator aren't drinking, also you'll be fine.
Now, Jason,
typically, you hope, right?
Jason's a director, and I'll tell you, when I looked at it, I love the cinematography. The lighting was amazing. Do you have any technical questions that for Collin that he might be able to answer?
That would be more. There's a million. I'd love to know every. What did you shoot on? What cameras were they was shooting on? What was the lighting like? There was a good bit of natural lighting, I noticed.
Yes. I couldn't tell you. I could not remember for the life of me what camera we were shooting on at the time. But our DP was Toby Oliver, who's just a phenomenal cinematographer, and he came on and he actually did work on the film Get Out which I think he did right after us. And so I mean he's just a genius, and there's a lot of natural light, and they did a lot of just phenomenal work getting those shots.
It's beautiful.
And, it was definitely time consuming.
Yeah, I mean it's an absolutely beautiful film. It's a film that really stands out to me because it's been sort of a wasteland out there for the past few years, honestly. It's been hard to find good cinema, and one of the things that I've missed a lot is a movie that is really character driven, really driven by the performances, but that is also something in like the horror or the fantasy genre or something like that. So it was really refreshing. I mean, even the character of, and I'm drawing a blank, I don't remember the name of the actor, but the Wolfman.
James LaGrosse.
It's just not a huge part, but his performance. And you don't
get a lot of context with
No,
him
you really,
either.
no, you don't. In fact, I was going to ask about that if there's a little bit more information out there about the Wolfman, but with such a small amount of material given to him, he really breathed a lot of life into that part. And it was just super impressive. And I just think everybody in this movie just did a fantastic job.
And was there a hope or dream that there would be multiple films? Because it seems like that they could produce 2 or 3 more and cover a lot of juice.
Before you answer that question, we have come up on our first break.
Okay, let's take
so
a quick
we
break.
are going to take a quick break. We will be back in about 1 second.
And we're back.
Yay.
With Collin Kelly-Sordelet.
And speaking
Hello.
of the name, I have a new question.
Yes, she does.
So, Collin,
okay.
I had a question about, stage names in general, because I saw an interview a long time ago with Benedict Cumberbatch, and he mentioned how his parents wanted him to change his name to something else to use as a stage name, because they were like, Benedict, it's such a strange name. It's not going to work in Hollywood. So did you have any sort of struggle with your name, or is that, what was the thought process behind keeping your own name?
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but this is the "you smell like hamburger" part.
Oh, yeah, I was
which is like
gonna
my
ask about
favorite
that
line
too.
in the entire movie. Sorry, continue.
No, totally right. That's one of my favorite lines as well. Yeah, I mean, I think, I never really thought twice about it, to be honest. I mean, like maybe early on when I first joined the union and you have to officially choose your professional name. Mm-hmm. And so often, one of the reasons why people change their name is because that name's already taken.
Right.
There's probably, so I don't really remember if there was a Collin Kelly in SAG at the time.
Okay.
But I always kind of felt, this is my name, this is who I am. And I think, one of the things that's so lovely about, that story with Benedict Cumberbatch is I'm so happy he didn't change his name, because what a great gift we all get of getting to say Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh, yeah.
Brandywine, Candy Crush.
I mean, what a great name.
Slapped you back, fished your buns. Yeah.
Cucumber Patch. I mean, like, there's a million of them. And
Benedict, we love you.
So 100%. Huge fan. But yeah, no, I never really thought twice about it. I always was like, this is me, is my name. And, I think one of the things that gets a little tricky sometimes is because people are always really confident on, like, Collin Kelly's Sordelady. So they're always a little curious. Sordelady. Well, so funny. So a lot of my family out in the Midwest goes by Sordelet.
Oh, really?
And then my dad, made a conscious choice of going by Sordelady when he went out east, because a lot of the time people were just kind of deferring to that. And so he was like, okay, this is who I am.
It's just easier.
So
Stop correcting them.
Yeah.
Yeah, the choice was almost made for you in a sense.
Exactly. It's like once people start calling you that, it's like, well, I guess I can't change it now.
No, I do.
It's very French. No, you're cool.
No, I was going to ask you a quick question about locations, because I know that the cave sequences were filmed in a warehouse in Brooklyn, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were. We were in the Brooklyn Navy Yards, I believe.
Okay, now all the other houses, the house where the party is, the house where Ray and Liv Tyler, I can't remember her name, where they live, Ellen, were those where were those filmed?
So we mostly shot around New York State, and we were and not too far outside of New York City, because that's where a majority of the cast and crew were living, temporarily for the filming. So I remember we filmed a good bit in Sleepy Hollow. I remember, like, the police station is all in the Sleepy Hollow police station, and in that surrounding area, along the Hudson and so on. And that was a lot of fun. And actually, funny enough, some more movie trickery was the scene where Anna and I kind of say goodbye in the river. We actually filmed in what was it? I believe it was the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens.
Oh, really?
Cool. No, excuse me. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't the Botanical Gardens. We filmed it at the zoo. It was at the Bronx Zoo.
The Bronx Zoo. Oh my God.
We filmed it at the Bronx Zoo.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I just remember that's all coming back. But it was so cold because we were filming in November. Yeah, well, we were filming in November, and we had to spend all day in the water, and so we were wearing wetsuits underneath our clothing, and we were only allowed to be in the water for so long before they had to take us out, take our temperatures, put us in a heating tent, pour hot water over us and do all this so that we could go back out. Jeez. Because temperatures were a little above freezing, and it was just tough. But I think worse was the scene when we were right before the love scene at the lake. Poor Belle, we were filming in an actual lake. She had to just crawl through the muck, wearing just a nightgown, stuck in the water, for that classic wet T-shirt look thing that's in every horror movie.
Yeah.
And I just felt so bad for her because it was just freezing, and it was just one of those things that she was such a trooper, and it's just like these things they have to get done. But
one of the things you talk about classic horror movie, and one of the things that I really appreciated about this movie, from just a conceptual standpoint, is the fact that it flips the script so much, where you've got, quote unquote, the monster, because, the Wildling is ostensibly a monster. People have clearly viewed Wildlings as monsters. They've been trying to kill them. But in this movie, we're rooting for the monster. And we want the monster to win, and we sympathize. We don't sympathize with the people that are hunting them. Brad, quick question. How do you
Dorff.
pronounce Brad Dorff? Is it Dorff or Dorff?
Chucky. That's it.
I've known it as Dorff.
Dorff. Okay, great, fantastic performance, by the way. But you don't sympathize with him one iota, and it's so impressive because it is a horror-ish movie, but it's a subversive horror movie.
I think it depends on the perspective. I'm going to let Collin field that, though, because I'm interested in his opinion. It depends on your perspective as to whether or not you're female or male.
Really?
Yeah, because...
Yeah,
Go ahead, Collin. I'm interested to hear what you think about it.
No, please.
Well,
I'm very interested to hear what you think about it, actually, because I'm very curious, and I'll give my 2 cents, but I'd love to hear a little more on that point, if you don't mind.
Sure. So, you come into this relationship, and the starting point is that this little girl is being held captive. It's pretty clear from the very beginning that that's the case, and that, even though this man is claiming to be her protector and her father, he's neither of those things, you come to find as the viewer. But then... in the beginning, you get the sense that he might be sexually violating her, and he's, preventing her ability to even go through puberty. He's keeping her inside. He's taken utter autonomy over her entire existence. But then
he didn't have much of an end game.
Well, it depends. That's what I'm saying. Is that later you find out that she was going to become a wildling, so you wonder if you should sympathize with him because he's trying to let her live a normal life, but he almost kills her in the attempt to do so. So it depends on how and when you find out these different aspects of the story.
I disagree. I don't think he's trying to let her live a normal life at all. I took it as he was sort of trying to assuage some sort of guilt that he felt for doing the killing.
And killing her mother in the first place,
he takes this child and it's like, okay, well, I'm going to take this child and protect her from herself. Protect her from her nature. But then eventually But
it's an evil motivation overall, because in the end you find out, spoiler alert, hindsighters, is that when he's trying to abduct Anna's baby in utero, he's about to cut her open and steal the baby, and he puts an emphasis on the fact that if it's a little girl, I'm going to name her Anna, which is so creepy. So it depends on what's revealed and when, because for a second I was like, oh, maybe he's trying to help her live a normal life. He's just kind of warped in his attempt to do so. But then it comes full circle when he's about to murder Anna to steal her child from her.
I think this is a sign of a good movie because there is a lot of interpretation and there's a lot of... We could sit here and have a long discussion. Like, for instance, one thing I was thinking, did the gunshot scramble his brain? Because he's a totally different character after the shot, in my opinion.
Well, no, I think what really changes him is the gunshot probably had a big effect on his brain, obviously, but I also think it's because Anna got out from under his thumb. Once he realized that he had stopped controlling her hormones and her ability to develop into a woman, he was just like, because he tells that story when Anna does get locked up temporarily. He's like, oh, I had this dog and he got jealous and he got crazy, so I had to send him to the good place. And there's an anchor point where he drops anchor and he's just like, oh, I'm giving up on this project. I'm shooting this person or this animal and I'm starting over.
Well, I recognize that. But when he walks into that room in the beginning of the movie and he has the gun in his hand, there's an obvious emotion. He's crying.
And he pointed it at her.
Yeah, he pointed it at her, and then
because he was going to put her down like a dog, but then he couldn't do it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of complexity, I think, to the character. And even when it's all over with, and again, this is what I love about a good story, is you can sit back and go, well, wait a minute, now that could mean this, it could mean that. I think I need to watch this movie a couple more times, and really get a feel for it.
Well, especially when it comes...
Yeah, I mean, No, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I completely know. I am so happy you all, feel this way, and I love hearing all of your, different perspectives of it. Because I think that, as you said, that's one of the great things about, films and about stories, is getting the opportunity to walk away and have these kinds of conversations. Is I felt that maybe it was this way, maybe it's this way, or what happens next. And those are always some of my favorite films and stories. These are the ones that leave me asking questions and trying to understand and want to go back and learn more.
Of course, it was written and directed by Germans, though, so I'm sure no, you are very wrong. It has one meaning. Here it is. This is what the film means.
Well, yeah, well, they definitely, I think, coming from, Germany, which just has such a lovely, rich history of these dark fairy tales, and with the Grimm brothers and the Grimm fairy tales and things, and so many others, of this complexity, and that it's not always so pretty and cut and dry, and that there can be a lot of different interpretation to its meaning. But I know a really strong one was, of course, the allegory of womanhood in this, and that suppression of males, and so often the way men can turn women into monsters, or make them feel villainized, or how we can so often be the monsters in this.
I actually love that you bring that up, Collin, because when I had some of my original questions for you, I think Mr. Brown was afraid that I was being a little too extremely feminist with some of them. So that's interesting to hear you say that.
We are living in the South. It's a bit of a patriarchal society, I think, here. There's more defined roles than what we experienced necessarily when we were living in New York City. And when I was reading Jade's questions,
Darth gets us sandwiches.
I bring them beer. I don't make them sandwiches.
No, see, look at that. Case in point. Yeah. Just kidding. But yeah, no, I read the questions, and yeah, there was definitely, I felt emotion when you watched the film, because we have been oppressing women for millennia, and sometimes it comes out in strange ways. Particularly when you're married to them.
Well, I think it's more of a human story, though. I really do. Again, it's all from your own perspective, but I try to look at it from the standpoint of, Belle
Powley.
Anna. Anna is a human who, when I was in college,
she's humanoid.
Well, no, she's...
I'm joking, because she turns into the Wildling. It was a bad joke.
Well, but that actually is a good observation, though, because is she not still a human, though? She's a Wildling, but is a Wildling just a type of human? There's a real serious area of study in psychology of people who have been denied access to the outside world during their developmental years. Mm-hmm. And when I was in college and I was minoring in psych, we were taught about how in the old days, because this actually happens, and it happens with startling frequency, that people are actually denied outside sensory input from the time they're very young. And in the old days, they were literally treated as wild animals, and that was how the psychological community dealt with them. And it was a sort of a revolution for people to say, no, these are people. They just, because of the circumstances, they're different.
Right.
But you still have to recognize the humanity in them. Well, and I think with Anna, I think even at the end of the movie, you see her holding the child, and it's a very human moment.
Yeah, she's just enjoying the Northern Lights. Yeah, I think her humanity and her saving grace actually comes from her being a wildling, because her instincts start to kick in, and a regular quote unquote human being would have a much harder time adapting to suddenly being able to go outside and feel the soil.
Well, she doesn't pity herself.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. She's just reacting to the environment around her. She sees a deer and she wants to chase it.
She's always strong, and I liked that. She, at no point is she weak. No, she
doesn't pity herself. She doesn't sit there overthinking the situation. She just follows her instincts, and I think that's what keeps her from going insane.
Yeah, and she ends up making her own world.
Yeah, she does. And I did just bring up the Northern Lights. Collin, was there more significance to that maybe wound up on the cutting floor? Because I couldn't figure out what the fascination with it was, other than maybe she just hasn't experienced them before.
It's been a little bit since I've seen the film, to be entirely honest, so I don't really remember exactly how much of it. But we did film a pretty extensive bit, kind of discussing the Northern Lights up on the roof when we're kind of having a moment, looking at the stars,
right,
and kind of talking. So I don't really remember how much of that makes it into the film. It doesn't sound like it was as much as maybe needed for the story to fully connect that theme.
No, not really.
So it's definitely possible. I mean, there's so many things, in that where, on the day you takes and takes of dialogue and things that, feel good and really do connect the story. But then, once you're in the cutting room floor, they end up, maybe dragging out, or the scene, doesn't click, or it's not fast enough, or you've got to cut down time on your edit and things. And so unfortunately, sometimes stuff gets left on the floor. But one previous thing I actually want to touch on, just to your previous point, and I kind of made it before, is I think one of my favorite parts about the film is just the duality of the question at the end of, despite her maybe being a wildling or being this like kind of wolf person, it's who's really the monster in it.
Yes.
Yeah, it really comes down to that question of who are the real monsters, or what is the real monster, and is it about just someone trying to survive just because they're different, or is it about a society who refuses to accept them?
Yeah, it's a lot of complexity. There's a whole lot of complexity, which again, it goes back to what I was saying about you can really sit back and talk about the movie for a long time and not really come to any conclusion. It's sort of a David Lynch kind of thing. And going back to what you said, Darth, about with the Northern Lights, I actually feel like they gave just enough information.
Oh, yeah?
Like the Wolfman, the Northern Lights, the Wildlings themselves, there's not a lot of exposition.
No.
You don't get a lot of the backstory, but I think you get enough to where at the end of the movie, you don't sort of feel like, well, wait a minute, that didn't make any sense. They didn't explain that. Everything in there, like with the Northern Lights, at the end of the movie, she's there. She wanted to go there. She made it there. And it's like, okay, well, that's a safe place for her.
Well, and not just a safe place, but it's a decision she got to make without being stymied by someone else. She was like, oh, that's pretty. I want to experience that. So she just went and did it.
Yeah.
Whereas like even the one, well, not the one ally, because she's got Ray as her ultimate ally along with Ellen, but even the Wolfman who is attempting to help her, he treats her like a show horse where he's poking around in her mouth and, lifting her teeth like a dog.
Well, you should know he's checking her.
No.
He's just checking her.
But like an animal. He's not treating her like a person.
But he's an animal.
Yeah, because I mean, he is a man living in the woods.
I got the impression.
So,
I got the impression that the Wolfman had a relationship with a female wildling
and was trying to emulate.
He might have.
I think he really. He clearly has some sort of connection in the past to wildlings.
Yes.
He knows where the bodies are buried, literally.
And in fact, the whole town must have had. I mean, there must be a history in this town of people going missing and being killed, and but again, it's just enough. We get through the plot, we know why things happened, and again, it's like a David Lynch thing. I'm happy. You don't need to tell me anything else. I enjoyed it.
So, Collin, once a film is done, are you ever uncomfortable watching yourself on film?
It depends. Like usually, I like watching the film a bit. Like I think it's one of those things that's difficult because, I learn a lot. I really like watching myself, especially on the day. Like I like watching playback footage if I can.
Right.
I learn a lot from my performances in terms of like, oh, I made this choice at this moment, or this little facial tick or whatever, or I reacted this way, and maybe I need to actually do this here. And so I really like watching it to be able to continue to try and improve upon the performance. And, I can tend to be a little perfectionist sometimes, and sometimes I'll get in my head and when I watch the performance, I'm like, it's that take, or it's like, I wish I did this there. But ultimately, I think it's hard. Like, I feel like you have to watch yourself because if I don't watch myself, then why should I expect anyone else to?
Were there any scenes that were particularly difficult, that you had to do a lot of takes on, or anything like that?
I think truthfully, some of the hardest stuff was just, dealing with elements, like quite literally, like when we were dealing with the cold, being in the woods, being in the water in the middle of November and December. One of the classic, fun things with, horror movies is always dealing with fake blood, which is sticky as hell.
We've experienced
and when that's on you all day.
Yeah.
Well,
Adam's brought that in before.
Yes, he has.
Sometimes if we're doing a shark film, I'll come covered with blood or
a zombie film,
murder film,
or a romantic comedy.
No.
But yeah, I guess that's all I would say is, and also just like the general, shooting schedules of, this was still a very high budget film. I believe I think we had a budget of about $20 million. It might have been a little bit more, which is a lot of money. But in the grand scheme of, films, it's not the highest budget. And so, it's still way higher than Escaping Ohio and anything I'm doing at the moment. But, at the same time, it still has its own trials, and there's still learning curves and dealing with certain things like the ever present we'll fix it in post, and what was originally supposed to be
Sure.
Yeah, what was originally supposed to be like 50 visual effects shots turned into 350. So it took a lot more in regards to going to effects houses and getting some of the visuals. And it had a long period. And we filmed this, I want to say we filmed this in the fall and early winter of 2015.
15?
And then it released.
1-5?
In 15, 1-5, and then it released in 18. So it's been about 2.5 years being edited and going through the process of going into distribution. And eventually in the States, it was bought and distributed by IFC. Yep. And then later down the road went on to Netflix, and that's where it's been living since.
Did it have a theatrical run?
We've been incredibly good for. It was a very light theatrical run. I think it might have only been in a few art house theaters throughout the country, primarily in New York and LA, I believe. But I do believe it had a bit of a small national release. And then internationally, in Europe, we were distributed by Warner Brothers, and there was a bit of a release in Indonesia and in Russia and in a few other countries. That had some success.
It just boggles my mind that studios and distributors, if they, I look at a movie like this and I think $20 million, put a few $1 million more into marketing it. I mean, this is the sort of movie that I would go see. I would pay money and go sit in the theater and watch it. And I have to think that there are a lot of people who have a desire to go and see movies like this at the theater. And I just don't understand why why it doesn't make it to the theater unless it's a $200 million, Marvel movie.
Because
it's really a shame.
Ride.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a ride. Yeah.
But I have a different.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No. Keep going with that point.
Finish that thought, Collin.
Well, yeah. I guess to finish that thought, I think so much of that is really transitioned in the past 10 years with streaming services, because a lot of the classic films that used to come out like rom-coms and kind of buddy comedies and things have all transitioned to streaming service pretty much. Right. And so most rom-coms and things aren't being released in theaters as often. And with our economy and with the kind of mentality, I mean, a quarantine and a global pandemic doesn't help over the past year and a half, but. But, I think part of the mentality and why you see a lot of people leaning towards nostalgia and doing remakes or sequels is money, is because what can we bank on that I'm going to put $200 million towards that I know I'm going to get that return on. Right. And sometimes, teenage wolf girl love doesn't always make that cut.
No. And of course, there's always the ever present, will it play in China question, which is increasingly, Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to spend $200 million, it's got to play well over there. And culturally speaking, you end up with two very different kinds of movies. And in order to make a movie that will work in both markets, you've got to water it down so much that you kind of end up with the Marvel movies. And not to slam on the Marvel movies, but they're the obvious example.
Entertaining.
Yeah.
It's just, but
yeah, I mean, we're in that place of just popcorn munching. I don't want to think too hard. I don't want to ask too deep of a question. I want to just be entertained, and we're really, especially I think over the past couple of years, I think we're really back in that deep elements of big adventure set pieces because of escapism.
Yes. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right there.
For sure. And Collin, I've got a different kind of question for you. So I think it was Alan Rickman who said that in order to play any character well, you have to be able to empathize with them or relate to them on some level. And if you agree with that, what did you relate to most with Rey?
I absolutely agree with that. I think one of the number one things when you're an actor and approaching a role, and I don't remember exactly what he was referring to in that quote. Well, I always think of Alan Rickman right away into Hans Gruber.
Yeah, well, they were asking him about all of the...
He played somebody other than Hans Gruber?
Yes, he did.
Yes, he was the sheriff of Nottingham, which you two were so supportive of. But I think it was actually an interview back in the 90s about why he's always the villain in a show and why he's so successful at playing an evil person. And he said, well... not all of them have the most redeeming qualities, but if you can't empathize or relate to them on some level, you're not going to be able to play them convincingly. So I think for him, it was specifically about playing so many villains. But with your character, I could see a challenge of it, not just the supernatural aspects, but a lot of stuff that a teenage boy wouldn't put up with, especially an angsty one where a girl's teeth are falling out and she's chewing a boy's neck off. And, like, the stuff that you can't necessarily...
Good kill, though. Very good kill.
Yeah. It was a great kill.
Which actually brings up an important question for all of you. What was your favorite kill? Mine was Roger. I was very glad to see Roger violent.
Roger.
But the kid, Hugo, was that his name?
You mean the would-be rapist?
Yes, the would-be rapist.
Yeah, I didn't like him at all.
I didn't like him. That was a good kill, but Roger's kill I think was more satisfying.
True.
Yeah.
Now, you haven't been long out of high school. Are kids really that mean still in high school?
What are you, nuts?
They're meaner.
They're so much meaner.
Man, yeah, I think they're meaner. I do not envy, because like I'm not to age myself, but I'm going to. I'm 26 years old.
Yeah.
So some, a little bit further out, I mean, from high school, but like when I was growing up, like we had social media and things, but like when I was in middle school, like phones, like nobody had like crazy iPhones or anything. Like we were still, like we weren't fully immersed the way we are today.
Totally different world.
And there was still a bit of a separation between your physical life and your social online, your social media life, your social life and social media life. Whereas today there's so much more on top of each other, and it's so hard to separate the two and escape it, and so that's why there's such the push with things like cyberbullying. It's hard enough having to deal with kids or being different or going through the most awkward period of your entire life, or being forced to be around a bunch of other awkward kids that are kind of assholes, for lack of a better word, pardon my French, but it's tough, but then you can't escape it when you go home. So I would hate to be a kid right now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, whenever I was a kid, we had notes in class. I mean, that was probably the same. Mr. Brown had, cave wall paintings.
Yeah, they
would do like a mean deer or whatever, but yeah.
Smoke signals? Is that what it was?
Smoke signals.
He had to wait on the Pony Express for his homework to arrive.
No, he would get the Pony Express and it just
20 miles
red.
to get to school.
I can relate to you, Colin. I'm a bit older than you are, but I didn't have a cell phone until my parents forced me to get one when I started driving, and even then they were so expensive.
They forced you to get a cell phone.
I literally did not want one. But they were so expensive that I was afraid I was going to break it or that it gets stolen.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
I legitimately did not want one, and I didn't like the idea of people being able to track me down wherever I was, whenever during the day. And now,
absolutely.
And we didn't have the internet connected to our phones. We had these things, Colin. I'm not sure if you're old enough to remember them. They're called buttons, and they used to be on cell phones.
100%. The T9. Yeah, I remember texting T9.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I had to explain that to my mom, where she was like, "Why is texting suddenly illegal while you're driving 10 years after the fact?" I said, "Because buttons are no longer on phones. I used to be able to hold my cell phone behind my back, not even have to look at it to edit it. I knew exactly which buttons I was pressing and how many times I needed to press them to get the proper letter. You can't do that anymore. So that's why people started crashing. It's because of buttonless phones.
It's so hard. Yeah, you can try now, but it usually just turns into gibberish.
Yep.
So yeah, it's tricky.
But
now we are actually coming up on our second break.
Okay, we'll take a break.
So we are going to take a quick break. We
Don't go anywhere, everyone.
Yeah, and everybody stay right where you are. We will be back in about 1 second.
And we are back with the Wildling and Collin Kelly-Sordelet.
woo!
And when we left, I believe Jade had a question.
We got derailed from a question of mine, actually. So, Collin, we talked about the whole Alan Rickman being able to empathize / relate to the character that you're playing in order to play them to the best of your ability. So you said you agreed with that. And in that sense, with Ray facing so many supernatural aspects in this movie and things that a normal teenage boy wouldn't necessarily have the emotional depth to tolerate. What did you find so relatable about Ray?
Well, yeah, I think the quote itself, I think, with Alan Rickman, it is approaching, like you can't immediately like look at your character as a villain. So even moments where you maybe don't disagree or that you struggle to understand who they are, you have to try and link like what are relatable emotions or a relatable mentality that I can lock into, that I can play, that I can play honestly and is in turn, a piece of myself, because it's always this character filtered through me, right? So there's always a piece of you in it. And for me, I think what I latched onto with Ray was just that sometimes that sense of being misunderstood or feeling alone, especially when you're a kid and you're struggling to, understand who you are and your place in the world and how to talk to, someone you like, and being able to do that's tough. That can be really hard and to just be understood. And that's something that I think that everyone really struggles with. I mean, I think it's a very human concept of just, we all want to be loved, understood, cared for. And we oftentimes, even so often when we try and be the rebel, we try and like stand out. Oh no, I'm the black sheep. I'm doing my own thing. So often people want a community and they want to be accepted. And so I think that those are the elements in Ray, that feeling of being lost but then found is what I really responded to and what I tried to really isolate as best I could, and in that relationship, because the first time he's able to kind of see some of the beauty in the world is because of Anna and through her eyes, because he's seeing it for the first time almost again.
Wow.
Yeah, they shared a lot of that and his characteristics, and then ultimately the intimacy that produced a little baby.
The Wildling Club.
Yeah, there's almost two antagonists and two protagonists because
Do tell.
Because each brings about change in the other.
Mm-hmm.
They both, Ray has an arc, Anna has an arc, Brad Dourif has an arc, but it ends up being, dead. So it's less of an arc. But Anna and Ray both have this at the end of the movie, they are very self-actualized because of each other. And I think that's pretty cool. Again, it's a very unique movie, just from a screenwriting standpoint. And like you were saying about the, wanting to be accepted, wanting to be, normal, it's very human. The whole movie has a very human feel to it, and there's a lot of human themes, which is really cool because it's technically a monster movie.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of that in Liv Tyler's character, Ellen, because when I was reading a lot of the reviews of this movie, there was a bit of scorn for her, unfortunately, almost as though she was too... not that this was the word I read, but almost too blah for the role. And I was like, well, I don't know. From a feminine point of view, she's in what's a stereotypically male-dominated field. She's a sheriff. And even in a small town where you're surrounded by hunters and typically masculine men, maybe she has to sort of dial it back and be as neutral as possible at all times, because she never really goes off the rails or screams or cries or has emotional reactions in this movie. And I wonder if that was an artistic choice on her part for that exact reason.
I don't mean to laugh, but Brad Dourif is going full Emperor Palpatine right now. So
he's fallen to the dark side.
He's putting blood on a map, circling where he's going to get the
one thing I'd love to say about Brad is, I mean, I've always been just a huge fan of him. I mean, like seeing like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest when I was a kid and just being blown away by his performance as Billy is heartbreaking.
And Chucky, of course.
Dune, I mean,
and that one episode of Babylon 5, that was a very good episode.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's prolific.
Also, I mean, he's great as Wormtongue in Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Well. I mean, he's just
also
such a lovely. Also would Liv, but he's got such a lovely, varied career, and we never had any scenes together, and so we were rarely on set together. But the few times that we were, he was just so gracious and just such a lovely person to talk to, and so down to earth, especially someone who's had such a varied and wealthy career as an actor, playing such varied and beautiful, rich characters. He was just so down to earth and so cool and just calm. He's like, yeah, I have a house in the woods. I live with my girlfriend. Super cool. Yeah. But he was great.
I love to hear stories like that. Those are the best stories.
Yeah. It actually makes the movie better.
It does.
It's sort of like the Firefly phenomenon where, people will say that a TV show or a movie is better when you know that the cast all really liked each other.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the same thing. Yeah.
But let me just touch on, and while we were on break, I talked to Collin a bit about this. He shared with us his age, which I'm always very careful not to do because I know
I've been keeping that secret for years.
Such as myself.
It's out. He said it on a previous episode.
Except we bleeped it.
Yes,
that's right. We bleeped it.
But to that point, you've been in the business for a while now, and it is. we can't always get what we want, right? When we want it. And it's filled with disappointment. You were a student at Juilliard, which...
Are we talking about my love life again?
Yeah,
Not everything is about you, Jason. God.
Yes, no, not about you. No, but there are people that dream of going to Juilliard, and you were accepted. You were a student at Juilliard. You got to go to the cafeteria and sing about cottage cheese.
Oh my
what is it
God,
made
Adam.
of? Just like Fame, right? but I guess where I want to go here is you went to Juilliard. You had to make a tough choice. And what was that like? What was the experience of going to Juilliard and having to make a career decision to leave prior to graduation?
Yeah. One, thank you for asking. I think so. A little bit of backstory on it. When I was in high school, I knew from a very early age that I wanted to be a professional actor. I come from a theater family, and so I kind of got bit by the bug very early on. And basically, I actually didn't. I had been lucky enough to get representation. I had an agent already, and so I was auditioning professionally when I was like 17. And I decided I didn't want to go to college. I really didn't want to go. I wanted to just go straight into auditioning. And, I was like, the most marketable time for you as an actor is between 18 and 22. And that's when you're in college. And so I had that whole mentality. And so I really didn't want to go. And my mom, with the lovely foresight as mothers always have, was I'll never forget it. Cause she just said, shut the F up and apply. I'm just trying to I was writing these essays and I was having a terrible time. I'm like, no one gets in here. I don't want to do. And she's like, just shut the F up and apply. You'll thank me later. And I did. I went, I auditioned. I was lucky enough to get a call back. I got a call back, and then I was lucky enough to be invited to their callback weekend, which is a 2-day intensive where you take a bunch of their classes. So it's a very intense program. It's very competitive to get into it. It scales down from several thousand people auditioning down to just a class of 18, and that's mixed between both undergrad and graduate students. That's a lot. So for my class, it was 8 undergraduate students and 10 grads, and so it was incredibly competitive. But I'll never forget. So I was really excited after I got my call back, and I was invited to the callback weekend. But it wasn't until the callback weekend that I was in the space and that I was there, and it felt tangible that I could be there. I just knew I wanted it. And I was like, I want to be here. Like, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to put my efforts, because it's a very small school. They, each class, is pretty small. So there's only about 1,200 kids there at a time, between acting, dance, music, and vocal performance, between those 4 different aspects. And of course, there's a lot of varied things within that, especially in the music department. There's, a lot of different specialties and specialties in specific instruments and compositions and things. But it was a really small community, but it was so passionate, and everyone loved what they did, and was working so hard in what they wanted to do, and that was so inspiring, and I loved it. And I'm a huge advocate for education. And ultimately, I ended up deciding to leave after my first semester because I had been cast in the Sting musical. And I had done the last production industry reading of that musical when I was in high school. I was 17 or 18, and I did it. I spent 2 weeks out of high school. I went and I got to work with Sting. It was really cool, but I never knew if that was going to continue on, if I would get the part. I was always just grateful for it, and I was like, I'm going to go to school and learn to become a better actor, and I'll move on. And then I got a call like, hey, they want you to audition. And when you're at Juilliard, you're not allowed to audition. Right. When you're in the school, their ideology is, you invest in us and we invest in you. Your summers are yours, but when you're here and you're not working. Yeah. And so there wasn't really a lot of wiggle room there. And so I actually I was a little sneaky, and I said that I had a doctor's appointment. And so I got out of a class to go do this audition. And then I went back to school, and then a couple of days later, I found out I got the role. And so I got to sit with it for about a week of whether do I leave this phenomenal acting institution that I love and that I really enjoy, and I know I'm going to learn so much more and continue to develop as an actor, or do I step right onto the stage and get to work with Sting and John Logan and Joe Mantello and some of the really incredible powerhouse people in the industry. And I ultimately decided to leave because I spent the week really, I kind of knew immediately that I wanted to leave. I was like, oh my God, I want to do this. And I kind of spent the week trying to be like, what are the reasons why I should stay here? And there were a lot of them. And it was really hard. It was really difficult because I made so many friends, and, you know, there was this whole experience, and there's such a wealth of love at that place that was really hard to step away from. But I ultimately decided that I wanted to try and minimize as much regret initially in my life as I could, because I felt that if I really came to the conclusion, like, if I'm going to be sitting in like some movement class a year from now, rolling around on the floor pretending to be a worm for like 6 hours and seeing someone else doing a role that I could have been doing, I'm going to regret that, and I might resent the program or my choices. And I felt like this is something that I know I can do, and it's a risk. And so often, you know, that's part of the business. And so I left. I did the show. You know, we did an out of town in Chicago, and then we were on Broadway for a few months, and it didn't culminate to the major experience that we were all hoping. It wasn't the hit that everyone had banked on and was really praying for. And that wasn't against, you know, either the material, that wasn't against any of the people or anyone involved. That was just, no one really wanted to see a show about a bunch of people, you know, building ships. They didn't really.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a bit of a marketing issue, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to point fingers at anything, because I don't think there was any one thing. You know, so often, like, people that saw the show had such a connection to it about these relationships with family and this dynamic of it was really autobiographical about Sting's life, about the town and the people who raised him in Newcastle, England, Wallsend, and about like some of his family were shipyard workers, and he had an album called Soul Cages that he wrote, and it was right around the time his father died and this shipyard closed, and so a lot of the music stemmed out of that album, and it was just this reeling of emotion of coming back to the home and the people that raised you. And, well, long story boring, some of that got a little lost in terms of translation to advertisement and to audiences. Yeah. And so people that had seen it loved it, but people that, you know, didn't really know about it, there wasn't enough of a buzz. And so it
seems like it's something that should have been on the West End. As opposed to Broadway.
Something it probably should have started. But I think it might have been stronger had it started in West End and kind of garnered that British support, and because I mean it was very much an English story, and I don't know, maybe there's still hope for it there. I think it might even actually touched on the West End at some point, because they've since retooled it a bit, and they've rewritten a few characters and redone it a bit. But it was a pleasure, because Sting, you know, at one point stepped into the production to try and, you know, bump up the sales. And so that was just a huge pleasure, getting to share the stage with him and sing with him every night was so cool. And a huge just testament to him. You know, he had to go on a tour after, and I forget who it was, a very famous artist. I think it was Paul Simon. He was supposed to go on tour with Paul Simon. And he tried getting out of it so that he could stay to keep promoting the show and stay in the show.
Yeah.
Paul wouldn't let him out of it, though.
Tough choices all around.
Well, it was really his lawyers and his business partners were like, you're going to lose millions, and it's not going to be good. You got to let it die. But he was such a phenomenal collaborator, and he gave his all. Like, he was worth he is who he is, and we all call him just Sting because he worked that hard for it. Right. And he was there every day. He, you know, put his whole heart and soul into it, and then literally sung it out on stage. And he was just a phenomenal talent, and that was really inspiring. But, you know, from all that, you know, I left school. I left Juilliard. I'm 19, and I had these hopes that, like, I'm on Broadway. Everything's just going to click in from now on. Like, my career's set. Like, it's all uphill from here. And it. Well, you know, naturally, hubris, you know, and humility, you know, is thrust upon you, because I spent 9 months auditioning and getting close to things, not getting things, not getting callbacks. And then, you know, one of the next big things I got was I think it was an episode of Blue Bloods, and I got Wildling around the same time. And so I was incredibly grateful. But in that, 9 months of auditioning and just, being, putting your shoulder up against the wheel, it really just taught me the humility and to not take a single experience or single job for granted. And that every time we step into this work, like, you're never above work. You're never too good for work, because the whole process of this is about it's about the journey. It's about learning, and it's about collaborating. And man, it was tough. It's had its ups and downs, and there's been a lot of success and, just as much hard work. And I try to avoid the idea of failure, but at the same time, like, sometimes you make mistakes and you have to learn from them. And sometimes there's things that happen that aren't even in your control, and you just have to learn how to cope and have love for yourself and stay faithful and strong in the mindset that I believe I can do this, and that I have to stay in this. And if you want it bad enough, you'll get there.
Yeah. No, yeah. I was just going to say, I spent like 10 years pursuing acting professionally, and it was the best 10 years of my life. It really was. The relationships that I built that I still have today, you, right, and your parents, that all started, back in the mid 90s. And it's a part of it. It's just a part of life's journey. And many of us want to be professional actors. We're all artists, right? But some of us can do it professionally. Some of us can't. You have, as I may have said before, you have all the ingredients to be extraordinarily successful in this business. But, there's just some luck involved too, and persistence and tenacity. Don't forget that. And I'm so excited that you're producing and writing, your film Escaping Ohio, because you're just going to learn so much from this and gain so much great experience. And it's just going to be another stepping stone in your journey to success.
Yeah, and I'm very, very...
Thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah,
That's really sweet. Thank you.
I think we're all very thankful that we are getting a chance to speak with you at what I think is obviously the beginning of something great.
Nascent period.
Yeah.
So when we're even older, we can say we knew him when.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, well,
we were able to book him for our little podcast.
Well, just remember, so that when you have your 40-foot yacht, you'll invite us out for a little tool around, somewhere in Florida.
From your mouth to God, dude. Good Lord. Well, look, no, to the three of you, thank you so much for your kind words, and thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to come on your podcast and speak about my experiences and about this lovely film that I was so grateful to be a part of. And I really appreciate all of your perspectives and your thoughts on it. And it was so lovely to get to hear a chance, because I haven't spoken about this film in a long time, and especially not maybe as in depth as we got to speak in a few of the aspects. So that was a real gift to me. So thank you all very much for this. And it's just been a pleasure.
Yes, and we were not exaggerating. Anything that you'd like to send us as far as support for your upcoming projects, anything that you have existing, it's a running joke that we say Darth will put it in the show notes. And on social media, I will absolutely do that because the boys don't believe in the internet, so I have to do all of that for us.
And if the movie has like a drug-addled homeless person character or something, I know a retired sailor who
6 knots to nowhere, my friend, at all times.
But no, I think we're wrapping this up at exactly the right time. So do you want to take us home, or how do we want to?
Well, I just want to say thank you very, very much.
Yes, we
Thanks
appreciate
again,
your
Collin.
time, Collin. It's been extraordinary getting to talk to you.
It was very wonderful. It's a really cool thing to watch a movie on one day, love it, and then the next day talk to somebody who was in the movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's not something that's a real treat.
Strike Zone.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
That was my movie. I'll send you the link to that podcast. You will laugh out loud. But,
well, I mean, your persistence paid off, Mr. Brown. You wound up in a local Shakespeare production and then wound up on this infamous podcast.
Yes,
so there
indeed.
you go.
It's all downhill from here, buddy.
Don't worry.
All right. Well, thanks again,
gosh.
Collin.
Well,
Take us home, Darth.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you all.
Well, Hindsighters, this has really been a special treat getting to talk to Collin. Thank you once again. I can't say it too many times. Thank you for joining us. This has been Hindsight. Thank you for joining us for your drive time, your listening time. You're getting to talk to an actual working actor time. This has been Darth, Jason, and Adam with Collin. This has been Hindsight, and good night.